picked 5 books. And she goes, okay, and then your next book, B, tell us about that. And I was like, there is no book called, I was like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even know why she said that. That wasn't, so anyway,
Oh my
it totally
gosh.
threw me. And I just kind of
Okay.
like laughed and I didn't know how to handle it. What I should have said is, well, I don't have a book called B, but I do have a book called Bluebird Day. You know what I mean? But I didn't do that.
Right, right,
So anyway.
right.
But anyway, my advice is like just pretend nobody's watching and um you can edit however you want. More people watch it on social than they'll watch it on the TV,
Right.
I feel
That's
like.
true.
So
That's
so
true.
it's just great to have the clip and
Yeah.
just wear something bright colored and have fun with it.
Okay.
No
Okay.
patterns, bright colors, have fun.
Okay. That sounds
That's
great.
yeah.
Um, and I'll just say that I'm having some asthma today. I have my
Oh,
inhaler. I've taken a shot of it, but if for some reason I start to cough, I mean, I'm hoping I'll be fine, but I just want to flag it. I'm getting
it's
over a cold from like months
oh,
ago. So anyway, hopefully we'll
if
be good.
it's fine. We edit, so
Okay.
it's all good.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Well, you ready? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, Meg. You're back on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I'm so excited about your new book, Bluebird Day. Congratulations. Yay.
Thank you, Zibby. It's so great to be here again.
I am loving watching your career sort of progress. And I know we're publishing your book, but like as a sort of caring outsider too, as like a reader, it's just so fun to see you develop and your characters come to life and all of that. So I am taking a lot of joy in this.
Oh, well, it's all, I credit you. So thank you so much for giving me another opportunity. It's been amazing.
Oh, well, if it wasn't me, it would have been someone else. But so I'm just glad to be along for the ride. Why don't you tell listeners a little bit about Bluebird Day and first, like where this idea came from? And
Sure. So Bluebird Day is about Claudine and Wiley Potts, who are estranged mother and daughters, and they used to be ski racers. They've been estranged for many years. Claudine was an Olympian, and Wiley was bred to be an Olympian, but she did not want to do the sport. She quit to go to art school. It causes a rift, and they haven't been speaking. And now they're stuck in this Swiss village with an avalanche socks in their town. And the only place to stay is a youth hostel with bunk beds. Claudine has a secret she wants to keep buried. Wiley wants to know more about her mom and her past, and it's all coming to light. And this story in 2018, there was an actual avalanche that socked in the town of Zermatt, Switzerland. And I remember seeing it, 13,000 tourists were stranded. And I just sort of filed that away because I was like, God, that is such a fascinating thing to have happened to all these people. What was it like to be on vacation there? How did people's trips change? What if there was no place to stay? And if you were in charge there, how are you notifying everyone that they were stuck for all this time? So I sort of filed that away. And when it came time to write this book again, I really was like, okay, this Switzerland piece is going to be the piece that forces this mom and daughter together in this sort of closed room scenario and pushes them back together. And a lot of hijinks ensue. And they also begin to get to know each other again, which felt really lovely.
oh, I love that. It is sort of a nightmare thinking that the place you go for vacation could ultimately be like the worst thing that's ever happened. I think about that too whenever I read stories like that and like
Yes.
tsunami and like that horrible
Yeah.
in Thailand and like, I'm always like, well, maybe we shouldn't go there. Well, maybe we should cancel that trip and let's just stay home. Not that home is ever safer, but like it doesn't, why add unnecessary risk?
What's so funny, I ended up interviewing some people who were stuck there and they had a blast.
Huh.
They couldn't ski anymore, but everybody was safe. And the town turned it into this massive party, and people were getting to know other people from all over the world. They were all in it together. It wasn't what they like would have chosen, but in the end, they had an amazing experience, an amazing memory. So I didn't want to put them into like a tsunami danger, but
Right. Yes.
there were a lot of silver linings, I think, for the people that were there.
It's like a snow day for everybody.
Yes, but many days in a row.
Many snow days, right. But
Yes,
like where you have to take time off of your regular life and you might as well enjoy like the
exactly.
the youthful elements of all the snow and like the hot chocolate and all of that.
Right.
as long as there's, food. So that's just, so I love that as a device for framing the story. But your story, of course, is about the relationships and
Yes.
how our relationships with family and friends and everyone can really evolve over time, sometimes in ways that, you know, go together in parallel and some diverge and all of that. And the mother-daughter sort of competitiveness is something that I don't feel like we read about as much. And I feel like Wiley went another way in part, like, how do I compete with my mom? Like, here, let me
Right.
just like reject this. And tell me a little bit about that dynamic and how you structured that relationship and what about it like drew you to it.
I think right now there's such a spotlight on female athletes. They've all been doing this amazing stuff for years, but right now there's a lot of spotlight on women who are doing amazing things in tennis and soccer and all these sports, Caitlin Clark, basketball. Um, so I wanted to lean into female athletics and competitiveness and sort of mine what you do with that competitive streak when you're in your 40s and 50s and you're no longer, the elite athlete. Where do you sink that energy? And I feel like I'm a competitive person. I grew up playing sports and, put me in front of a board game and I was like, bring it. And I still sort of feel that way. Um, so I wanted to give Claudine this sense of competitiveness, but she doesn't know where to sink it.
Hmm.
And then for Wiley, she's
Wait, but
got,
wait, before you go to Wiley, what sports did you
yeah.
play? What sports did you play?
Oh, I played soccer mostly. And I was like, wanted to play, as far as I could take it. And I ended up getting injured
Oh,
and wasn't able to play anymore. So I could kind of tap into a little bit of that grief that happens when you grow up playing something for years. I mean, I was so dedicated. And so, what do you do with that? How do you change it? And there's a little bit of that grief both in Wiley and in
hmm.
Claudine.
Yep.
And for Wiley, she's just got even more talent than her mom. And yet she doesn't feel that sense of drive and that sense of competitiveness. She kind of shrinks from it. And I wanted to look at for her, what do you do when you're really good at something, but you don't necessarily want to do it? And, like I have a girlfriend who's an amazing artist. And for years, I was like, you need an agent and you need to be in galleries and you need to, like all this acclaim. And she was sort of like, I just like creating art. I don't need to do it for any other reason. And I was sort of horrified by that. And yet I was also intrigued, what do you do with something when you're really great at it, but you don't need this outside um, affirmation? And Wiley not only doesn't need it, but she then doesn't really want to do it. It starts to really scare her and causes anxiety in her. So she has to buck up against the vision that her mom has of her life and go the other way, which takes a lot of bravery for her. So I was then able to kind of pull those two threads and have them butt heads over the visions that they have for their own lives and for each other's lives. And that was a lot of fun material to play with.
Wow. Love that. Um, I know the notion that that you don't need positive affirmation is something I really need to digest. I feel
Me
like
too,
I'm like
still.
so like everything I do, I'm like, tree falling in the woods. I'm like, no, if nobody saw this and I can't tell like somebody, even my husband or something, like, did it happen? Doesn't matter.
It's really true. I feel the same way. And I feel like I've been doing a lot of searching around my own, through this book, I've read a lot about mental health and being an athlete, being an
Hmm.
elite athlete, and then reflecting a lot on my own mental health of being an author. And they actually are quite similar, what controlling what you can only control. And when the Olympics were happening, I was reading a lot about of athletes coming out and saying, I'm protecting my mental health and here's how. And sort of being like, okay, like I can take some tips from these people who are able to sort of block out the noise and do what they love best and then sort of like come out of this trance-like moment. And I'm still learning.
Wait, what is some of the advice? I need the advice. Give it to me.
I know, I do too. I mean, I think it's like control what you can control and like think about your, I don't want to say temper your expectations, but aren't you always stunned watching the Olympics, knowing that someone who's like running a relay, there's at least three runners there that know they're not probably gonna win. They're the last ones. And yet they're still out there giving it their all. They've been training for this race, this one race, almost their entire lives. The odds are against them, and they're still going for it. And I think as an author, I've definitely realized, holy cow, every Tuesday, there are dozens of books that are flooding out to readers. We're all sort of jockeying against each other. We like each other, but we're also like, want to break out. And it's rare for someone to break out, and yet you're still trying your best. So, how do you stay sane as you're doing that? Um, I don't know if I even have all the answers, but I'm on the quest to learn it and to like be better at it, you know?
It is hard if you, I mean, that is such an interesting image, thinking about the books coming out almost like, as if each book is on a set of skis, like heading down the mountain. And
Yes.
how do you break out? It's true, it's almost impossible. But that desire, you have to hang on to that, or you might not even get on the mountain to begin with, right? There has to be something
Yeah.
in you that wants to go on the journey, even if you get injured or something happens. Or I was I remember watching the playoffs of the World Series. My husband watches sports like nonstop, and it was like the bottom of the ninth or something, and the Mets were still like trying really hard, and like even the announcer was like, "Oh, these Mets, it's not looking good." They were down like whatever, a lot, and they were still like trying and getting, And it's like, why give up? Like, because you can't give up, because you have to try your best. Regardless of the outcome. Like sometimes you have a tougher competitor, and sometimes but all you can do is try your best, and never like stop until the last second. So,
And for Claudine, she has the hard driving father who's really pushing her, but she also has this innate drive in her
yep.
to be the best at anything she does. She was sort of born that way. She's wired that way. And for Wiley, she doesn't. And ski racing, I was drawn to that sport in particular because it is one of the most dangerous sports you could do. It is just wild. You are going 90 miles an hour down, you're like a rocket going down a slippery, icy mountain face. So if you don't love it and you're not driven by it, it's very impossible to want to do it. And so Wiley just cannot will herself to do the thing that Claudine did and wanted her to do?
Yep.
Yeah.
You also have this other thread about sort of toxic relationships. And what do you do if you find yourself in a relationship where the person you're with is not always necessarily rooting for you for your own sake and wanting you to like self-actualize, but talk a little bit about that relationship and navigating it.
Yeah. Do you mean Wiley with her boyfriend
Yes,
Dan?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So Wiley starts off with a boyfriend Dan who she feels is really her safe space, and they've been training to do this bizarre fitness competition in Berlin, and he sort of sees her as his ticket. She's just again got this. She's just an incredibly physically gifted specimen of a person. So they've been training for many years for this competition. They barely eat any sugar, like life is very, very strict for them. And I think underneath that, she's yearning to break out, and she's broken away from her mom. And yet here she is replaying the same scenario in her romantic relationship, which like she's not the first person to have ever done that, and to be kind of unaware that she is now recreating these old patterns because we often seek out the thing that's we're most familiar with, even if it's not right for us. So she's in this sort of toxic situation. She's not totally realizing that that's what it is. But as she gets some space from him, he gets injured. No spoiler. And then that's why she's in Switzerland with her mom. And she gets space from him, and she begins to see this other way of being in the world that's more gentle and more relaxed and is more her. and she's eating pastries and she's just like, whoa, I want everything with a crumb structure. What have I been denying myself? And, I wanted her to really have this transformation where, yes, she had tried to voice who she really was to her mom, but then it was too scary to fully do that. So she got with Dan. And now as the novel progresses, she's finally self-actualizing. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it can be hard to get out of relationships like that, and
Yeah.
I love that you put that into fiction, and sometimes it takes stepping away to see some of the things that are right in front of you, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, and you also have the competitiveness of friendship and, I
Yeah.
guess fellow athletes as well. But, that's another part of why Claudine is drawn to Switzerland to begin with. It's um, trying to find an old, well, I don't want to give plot points away, but
Yes.
finding an
Yeah.
old friend um, and there is another plot device that you use, which I really enjoyed about having someone wanting to, unearth all the secrets, right? And having
Yeah.
this fictitious Substack come out in the middle and she wants to protect her secrets, Claudine, and she knows who might spill. So,
Right. Right. Yeah. Claudine has this old friend Zosel who was on the ski racing circuit with her for years and was her best friend for many years, and they've had a falling out. Um, and Zosel was a different type of competitor than Claudine, which really rocked her. She was someone who had a better, like just better mental health around the sport and competition and could give her all and yet not really just sort of self flog herself if she didn't perform well. And Claudine is really sort of jealous of that, um, and sees herself as being flawed. I think Claudine is also in a framework, a very black and white framework. When you're an athlete, you're either a winner or a loser. Even if you lose by a tenth of a second, you've lost the race. So she's also still sort of operating in that framework as sort of, I'm either a good mom or a bad mom. I'm a good mom or I'm a good friend or a bad friend. And she's taken that black and whiteness and put it on the rest of her life and not allowed herself a lot of grace, and not allowed herself to be human. And to be human is to fail. I'm a mom now. I'm like constantly messing up. I'm constantly trying to repair. Um, and that's very scary for Claudine because the only thing she knows is when you mess up, you lose. And when you lose, you actually get less love. When she, got less love from her father. So it's a very scary prospect. So I wanted to expand that for her and let her start to, burst out of that framework and give herself more grace in the way she operates in her life. And then when she does that, she's able then to give grace to the people around her.
so knowing what you know about professional sports and competition and mental health and all the examples we have in the media these days, like Simone Biles and
Yeah.
people, dropping out and the tennis. Now I'm blanking on the tennis player's name who stepped aside for, um,
Naomi Osaka.
yes, thank you, Naomi Osaka. As a mom, like if your children displayed talent in a sport, would you want them to become professional athletes or not?
That's a great question. Um, it's so funny. My little guy is 6 and he's already a really good soccer player. And we're psyched to see how talented he is, but we're also excited to see his passion and his drive around it. Um, are we taking him out every weekend and like drilling him with soccer balls? Sort of like the Williams sisters? No, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just not what we're doing. Do we want him to be a professional athlete? I mean, maybe not. I interviewed several former Olympic ski racers, and they don't regret their careers, but there was a lot of sacrifice. And one skier I spoke with who won a silver medal in the moguls, he said he knew he had had the sort of run of his life. And the first thought he had as he crossed the finish line was, oh no, now what? What is he going to do with the rest of his life? Where is he going to put his focus? And it caused a lot of depression. Like it really, even though he's like victorious, he it took a while to unwind. So maybe not, Zibby. I don't know. I don't think I have the full answer. I mean, if my son is like, actually, I'm going to be the next Ronaldo, we're also like, huh, okay, well, that buys that beach house. No.
Yeah, I wonder that too. We have good friends, and one of their son is a really gifted skier, and
Yeah.
they're, wrestling with that too. Do we have an obligation in a way to see his immense talent through, even though that
Yeah.
requires a lot of family sacrifice too? I mean, kids sports is a family decision, right? You have to invest so much time and time away from other things and sometimes other kids to foster that talent, and to what end? I don't know. These are all the questions.
Yeah. I interviewed a freestyle skier who, her family sacrificed a lot. They moved to Colorado from Massachusetts. They sort of, just changed their whole life. It was a lot of money. And the pressure that she then felt to sort of pay them back in a
Hmm.
way and to actualize this vision, it just got to be too much.
Hmm.
And it was hard for her to reckon with, gosh, I don't think I actually want to do this, and to begin to say it out loud. And she's still, she ended up quitting the sport. And I think she's still unwinding from that and letting herself off the hook and saying, like, that just wasn't for me.
Hmm.
Um, and I think some people have to go almost all the way.
Yep.
When you're at the level of an Olympian, there's so much that actually separates you from an incredible athlete and like the top elite athletes, even on the World Cup circuit. The people who are crossing the finish line consistently and the people who are just on the circuit, there's so much that is different between those people. And part of that is mental and the mindset to be able to withstand the pressure.
Wow. Well, this is fascinating. I don't think I've ever interviewed anybody who has then interviewed more people, particularly in contemporary fiction. Like you hear this a lot in historical fiction, or
Yeah.
maybe not first person interviews, but research, like deep dive research, and of course in nonfiction books. But to write about an industry, how many interviews do you think you did? How many people did you speak to?
Well, I definitely also spoke to folks from Zermatt, Switzerland. That I talked with the head of tourism there, and I have a journalism background, so I love interviewing people. And I just was like, "What was that like to go around?" He was like, "I went around with a bullhorn and had to be like, you're stuck here for 5 days." And I interviewed the people who were taking helicopters and evacuating folks from Zermatt and realizing that, wow, they could only do 500 people a day. There was really fascinating things I learned. Um, and I also chatted with a sports psychologist to help me unpack what Wiley was going through, what you're going through when you've been bred for gold and you don't want to do it and you've got all this pressure. And he helped me sort of see and begin to shape her character. So, I mean, all told, maybe a dozen people. But I just loved it. And I used to ski. I'm not a great skier anymore. So I wanted to make sure I had that world right and that I represented it in the right way. And I was also lucky enough to interview a skier who was on the World Cup circuit as one of the only moms. It's very rare to bring your kid as a ski racer on the circuit, and she's one of the only people who has done it. So what was that like to cart your kid around and rent a special van? So that also added a lot of color to the book.
Oh my gosh. So it raises so many questions. I feel like this book is going to be such a great entry point into discussing so many different current issues that people are in the zeitgeist already, which is fabulous. What do you want people to take away when they put the book down?
I think I want people to see a flawed mom and daughter who are trying to learn how to forgive each other and themselves, and that forgiveness isn't always linear. It
Mhm.
happens in fits and starts. And it's not just always like, okay, I forgive you, we're done. Like it's often an evolution and it takes a while.
Hmm.
And that estrangement, I know there's like a trend now of like no contact with parents sort of thing. Um, I don't think estrangement is always the worst thing to happen. It often can mean you're sort of stopping, you're hitting a pause button and you're going to your respective, corners so that you don't do more damage. And you're hopefully reflecting and working on yourself to come back together and, approach your relationship in a new way. And I write about this a little in the book that I think the best thing I can hope for with my daughter is that we begin to later in life see each other as people, not just a mom, which I think is a one-dimensional role, or just a daughter, but like who are we as humans? Because then we allow ourselves to make mistakes. And then we give ourselves the grace to apologize and repair. So I hope there's some inspiration there. And I also hope the book's also a love letter to winter and to the changing of winter as we face climate change. So I hope people are like, okay, like I want to do more in my small way to protect and care for winter itself.
Wow. Saying this, it's like 75 degrees today,
I
so
know. I
so it
know.
could not be more relevant. Well, Meg, congratulations. The book was great. You seamlessly integrated all of that information into a very cohesive narrative. Like you wouldn't know, like I had to find this from there, and like you did a fabulous job, and it was immersive and fun to read, but also makes you think about your own relationships and how much pressure are you putting on your kids? How much did you get? And maybe it's not about sports, maybe it's about something totally different, but I feel like a lot of people can relate to sort of parental expectations and then how do we pay that forward in a way as well. So just so many fun issues to discuss. Great book club book.
Thank you, Zibby.
Thanks, Meg. Congratulations.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay. All right, great. That's it.